Elections and Retirement will please come to order. It is Tuesday, March 3rd, 2026. It's 5:30 p.m., give or take. We're in room G12, G15 at the State Capitol building, and a quorum is present. Thank you for your patience. We're going to move right along tonight. The materials for today's meeting members are in the packets. Also, they're on the commission website if you want to follow along. We are going to take testimony tonight on multiple bills. We will, in general, follow the order listed in the agenda. Chair's prerogative to move that around if need be. I don't anticipate that, but if you're following along at home, we have a slight change in the agenda to accommodate Senator Miller and some constituents. That conflict will not affect the overall length of the hearing. And we're talking about a pension omnibus bill, so just for the advocates, we generally will lay bills over for possible inclusion in the pension omnibus, so the LCPR members will be discussing that before we get to the end of session. Have faith that you'll have an opportunity to continue to advocate for which bills are included in the omnibus bill or which bills you object to. The sergeant's office has some requests regarding security. I'm going to skip over those other than to say we have a number of people in the room who provide safety to the public. Thank you for that work. We try to keep the Capitol safe, and I trust people to use their best judgment in that. Please respect the sergeant at arms and requests that they make, as well as the State Patrol and Capitol Security. With that, Senator Seeberger, would you move the adoption of the minutes from the February 24th, 2026 meeting, please?
So moved.
Thank you. Senator Seeberger moves that the meeting minutes from February 24th, 2026 be approved. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The motion prevails and the minutes are adopted. We will then move on to Senate File 1213, House File 2117. Senator Miller, Rep. Repinski, if you want to come forward and testify. And I understand there may be an author's amendment. Rep. Repinski, if you got the amendment. Sorry, not to hustle you along. We show that as the 1A amendment. And with that, welcome to LPCR. Thank you for your patience. Fire away.
Thank you very much, Chair Frentz, and I do have the amendment. I'm looking to enter that now.
Representative O'Driscoll, you're willing to offer that amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'm happy to offer the A1 amendment to Senate File 1213 to get the bill in the form that the author wishes.
Representative O'Driscoll offers the 1A amendment. Any discussion to that? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Representative Repinski, to your bill as amended.
Thank you, Chair Frentz. Thank you, colleagues. A former employee of Winona State University has pay stubs showing IRAP contributions were deducted, but the retirement account cannot be currently located. This bill is about ensuring she gets the benefits she paid into and making this right. This is a narrowly tailored bill that only applies to one clearly defined case with the documented payroll deductions. The state is given 60 days to locate the account, and payment only occurs if the account truly cannot be found. I ask that let's make this right so Ms. Cook gets the benefit she was promised.
Thank you for that, Representative Repinski. Ms. Cook, retired teacher, always beloved on this commission. Thank you for that service. If you would mind, please introducing yourself and present your testimony.
I'm Molly Cook. I was a teacher for 40 years, and the last 28 years were spent working in Winona and working with families and their little babies and toddlers who have special needs. It was a fabulous job. What else do I need to?
Chair Frentz, can I briefly explain what
Absolutely, Representative.
Essentially, Ms. Cook has paid in numerous years, and the amount we're asking for was amended to $30,000. We used the $25,000 amount as a placeholder to begin with. The payment she should have received hasn't been received for a number of years. We've been dealing with this 4 years, and we ask that Minnesota State makes this right. Ms. Cook can testify that the payments were deducted, and there's been no payment received on her end to make this correct, and we're simply asking to rectify this issue.
Thank you, Representative Repinski. Ms. Cook, if you want to add any testimony to that, that'd be fine. Otherwise, we can see if there's questions from the members and move to a vote to approve. Up to you, of course. Minnesota State also could come forward if they want to testify. I see someone standing up and walking towards the testifier's desk. That's always a sign they want to testify. Mr. Dale, welcome back to LCPR. If you could please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Senator Friends, my name is Chris Dale. I'm the Interim Associate Vice Chancellor for Labor Relations for the Minnesota State Colleges and Universities. Minnesota State does not dispute that Ms. Cook made IRAP contributions, as did the employer. We have obtained documents from MMB from their microfiche files to show that these payments were in fact taken and made by the employer at the time. We do not have a record at Minnesota State that we have been able to locate of this particular account, but I think some of that issue lies in the nature of the IRAP plan as established by the legislature in the 1991 to 1994 periods, which is the time period that we're talking about here today. At the time, the legislation provided that there would be it provided that SBI would be the investment manager. The State Board of Investment would be the investment manager, and depending on which particular year we look at, either SBI or the Community College Board and the State University Board could select up to 2 others, investment fund managers, or 3 others, or 5 others, depending on the particular year. I have spoken with people who were involved with the Community College Board at that time and who handled this issue for the Community College Board, which isn't the same board as was governing the state universities. And we have a letter from that particular individual to a new faculty member at the time, and it identified SBI, Prudential, and TIAA as the investment options for that particular faculty member. We have no reason to believe that there were different investment options for Ms. Cook. We have contacted both TIAA and Prudential. They have no record of Ms. Cook having an account with them, having funds with them. We have only recently contacted SBI and asked them about this. It's fair to say, given that it's 34 years ago, SBI is as surprised, I think, at least the people we spoke to, as we are, that they were actually involved in managing these IRAP accounts. They don't know the answer, but my understanding is SBI operated as the default selection if an employee did not make a selection. So it stands to reason, given what we've learned from Prudential and TIAA, that if there were funds placed, they were placed with SBI. We don't know to what degree SBI was involved in actually communicating with participants. My source, the woman who signed this letter and was responsible for this for the Community College Board, tells me that SBI was reluctant to be involved in that part of the operation. And because the IRAP plan was new, a centralized record keeper was not provided for in the statute, and I don't believe the university board had one. So that is the situation we find ourselves in. It is not that anybody from the Minnesota State believes that that Ms. Cook should do without the money that she contributed, but we now believe that it probably is with SBI. The other concern we have is it's very hard from an evidentiary basis to distinguish Ms. Cook, who we have no reason to disbelieve, from any other person who might have contributed during that time frame who might be given to making a claim that we can't find their records, because we don't have records from that time frame. There wasn't a centralized record keeper for the state universities, and the statutory system, the legislative schema didn't provide for one, other than SBI as being essentially the default investment manager. We believe it would make sense to pursue the SBI avenue at this time and see if they can locate a record for Ms. Cook, rather than mandating that Winona State or Minnesota State as a whole pay this amount that we have no reason to know is not currently held by SBI.
Thank you for that, Mr. Dale. First, let's go to member questions. I think the chair's take on this would be, we have enough evidence to say that it's more likely than not she has not received the benefit and identifying where the assets are. So I hear you that SBI may come up with more information, but frankly, I think the better move is for my vote is to pass this, and we will have an omnibus opportunity if you come by some information at SBI. I think this group would be willing to listen to it. But at this point, we've got a Minnesotan who I think is asking for a reasonable amount of response from us. And if we're not going to do it, nobody else is going to do it for her. So I appreciate the situation that you're in with Minnesota State and Winona State. We want to succeed. But my vote will be to go ahead and pass this bill at this time. Let's go to member questions, and we'll leave room for any further comment from any of the testifiers. Fair enough? Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a series of questions to help with some clarification on here. Ms. Cook, were you an IRAP the entire time of your professional career with Winona State, or did you switch over to TRA?
It switched over to TRA. And the reason this was discovered is because I went to a pre-retirement meeting with TRA, and part of my Winona State years were missing. And that's how I started thinking about what happened to those. I think the document, I signed a document November of '94 for TRA.
Mr. Chair.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And have you ever received any statements from the IRAP account during the time that you were an employee at Winona State?
I have not.
And Ms. Cook, how many years are in question here?
91 to 94.
So 4 or 5 years, maybe 3, 4 years, it sounds like?
Yeah.
Okay. And what would have happened to those funds? Maybe somebody smarter than me can answer that question. Would those funds have been rolled into TRA as a part of the pension benefit in calculating her TRA monthly pension payment?
It's a good question, Mr. Dale. You want to try that?
Senator Friends, Representative O'Driscoll, the legislation at the time provided for electing TRA on a prospective basis. So the funds wouldn't have rolled over to TRA. And we do have evidence of what Ms. Cook has said is true, that she made an election to TRA in November of 1994.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And here's the head scratcher for me. All of a sudden, it seems like we found a new challenge with Minnesota State. We just cleaned up all of the, I didn't get my TRA paperwork and sign it, and we had nights where we had people come in and testify on this and try to figure this out, and we did some administrative things to try to make it easier and streamline that process. And just as soon as we did that, which was a year or two ago, now all of a sudden we found another related issue. And I think that there's a strong possibility that Ms. Cook's situation is not mutually exclusive, that it's going to be broader. And just for the members of this commission, you may see folks coming in future years with a very similar kinds of requests and questions. So we need to, as a body, think about that from a policy statement of how we're going to address that, because we certainly don't want to address one state employee or one disenfranchised employee differently than we would others on here. It does clearly sound like she's entitled to compensation on here. The question becomes how much and whether we'll ever be able to recover those funds or not. I hate to make it sound like in this day and age, but it maybe went into a crypto wallet and we don't know where the heck it's at.
It's an excellent point, Representative, that we don't want to see this, but I think that $30,000 is our best estimate of how to take care of this particular situation. So the minute there's a second one, I'm guessing we'll have some stuff to talk about. Hopefully there won't be. Other member questions? Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Would it be helpful to have someone from SBI give us some information? And the reason I find it, I think that would be helpful if they are just going through the records and they think it's there versus that they won't be able to answer the questions that we have.
I think it's a great question, Senator. Why don't we give you a shot at that first, Mr. Dale? Do you have any information from SBI which tells us, oh yeah, I'm sure we'll find it in the next 30 days, or there's no chance we're going to find it? And if not, we can see if anyone from SBI wants to come up and tackle that. Mr. Dale?
Senator Friends, Representative Rasmussen, Senator Rasmussen, sorry. We don't have that information from SBI. We just started communicating with SBI. They are, as I mentioned, they're unfamiliar with this historical record of their managing investment accounts or investments from employees of Minnesota, then the State University Board. With respect to, if I might, with respect to Representative Driscoll's observation that we had just cleared up these other issues, the other issues were really related to elections and record keeping that was to be done by individual kind of state universities and colleges. In my experience, and I've only been with Minnesota State since 1996, but in my experience, there has never been a claim that we lost money, that we lost an account. And so I don't know if that's likely, and I don't know how that impacts your thinking about this particular situation. It suggests to me that it's unlikely that the money actually is lost. It's someplace.
I appreciate that historical context. With that, I don't think we need to have anybody from SBI come forward. Senator Rasmussen, you still have the floor. Are you good?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I think this is a very important and serious matter. I want to make sure we have time to let SBI give us information I think is pertinent to this situation. And, you know, we do have a few weeks here in session, so my humble recommendation would be to lay it over and to see what SBI has to say, and then we can make a decision then. Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Chair.
Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. Further comments or questions for the testifier? We'll go to Representative Lilly, then to Representative Nadeau. Representative Lilly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I appreciate the final comments and that we had time to look at it and see if there's any others. But my sense is that, you know, maybe there's a way to grow the number then too for Ms. Cook, because it seems possible that she's getting shortchanged here. And so that's actually a possibility too. I would hope that this committee and whoever else is open to, you know, if the real number is higher, you know, it seems like the time value of money after all those years would be maybe over 25,000, but that's just thank you.
Thank you, Representative Lilly. It's a good point, although I think that, I'm going to go back to Representative Repinski here. Having agreed on a number of 30,000, an attempt to try to be fair to Ms. Cook, I think it's on them if they want to lay it over. I hear Senator Rasmussen saying he prefers it, but Representative Repinski, before we go to Representative Nadeau, thoughts on laying it over, thoughts on the possibility that the number might actually go up?
Thank you, Chair France, and thank you, Representative Lilly, for that. You know, looking at over the 32 years, looking at a rate of 10% rate of return would be $87,280. An average rate of 7.5% would be $41,825. You know, considering the amount that Ms. Cook is asking for, I think is very appreciative on her end and willing to negotiate that was what Ms. Cook and I did. We upped it from $25,000 to $30,000 to essentially kind of take care of the tax, which would be roughly $6,000 on that. I would like to see this get settled. Ms. Cook has been dealing with this issue for years and working the process and doing it as politely as she possibly can. COVID kind of set things back a little bit, but this is not a new issue for Ms. Cook. I know Senator Miller has been working with her for quite some time. Myself being a new representative, last year I was kind of brought into the mix, had the opportunity to meet Ms. Cook and hear her story and really felt for her on it. And made a commitment to her that I'll fight for her on this issue. So I would like to see some resolve on it.
Thank you, Representative. Further comments to that point? Seeing none, Representative Nadeau.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question is to the Chancellor. And if in fact, and before I get there, I think I agree with Senator Rasmussen that we should just kind of hold off for a second and see if there's one more thing that we can try to find. But I appreciate the fact that you said this is a one-off and you never noticed it before, you don't think it will ever happen again. And I'm wondering why the state should be responsible for this. Why doesn't this rely with MnSCU or state colleges?
Thanks, Representative Nadeau. I think that question's for you, Mr. Dale.
Senator Friends, Representative Nadeau, well, I don't believe that the bill as written actually levies the cost on the state. I think it's going to be Minnesota State's responsibility, but what I'm suggesting is that the money may actually be invested with SBI and that it makes, I think, good sense to explore that possibility rather than levying a cost to Minnesota State related to record keeping in the early 90s, which admittedly wasn't particularly impressive, nor was it required to be impressive.
Thank you, Mr. Dale. Representative Nadeau?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate that. This is not the first time that we've had an employment, issue where there's a challenge and there's a number of lawyers that, litigate these matters. And so that's I want Ms. Cook to be made whole. And I'm just not convinced that, number one, we have a very effective method from here to do it, especially in a timely manner. And number two is, if this matter has been going on as long as it has, why hasn't the college system found a resolution with someone who's willing to negotiate that? And with that, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Nadeau. Bless you. We're going to go to Representative O'Driscoll first and then see if further testimony is needed. Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things that has occurred to me while we're having this discussion because of another committee that I'm involved in is I asked Ms. Cook, she didn't receive any statements on here. SBI may not know that it's there. I'm just wondering if anybody's taken time to check with the Unclaimed Properties Division with the Minnesota Department of Commerce, because they end up getting those. And since there were no statements, there were no addresses and things, it may rest there. But I don't think that, I'm of the general ilk of where my colleagues are. She shouldn't be adversely affected by something she had no direct control over. And, a way to look at this is to lay it over and see what SBI says, or to go ahead and agree to a settlement, and then if SBI or someone comes before we pass the omnibus bill, then we can take that under consideration. Either one works, I think, but I would be curious to see what SBI has to say as well.
I agree with you, Representative O'Driscoll. Further questions or comments? Here's one for you, Representative Repinski. I agree that this Minnesotan should not have to wait any longer for some certainty. My instinct, if we were to put this to a vote, is to pass it, but every member of LCPR's got their own ability to do that. I would say, if we were to discover after passing this and before sending an omnibus bill out that SBI has further information, or if, heaven forbid, Ms. Cook gets the benefit of this money and later, a year later, SBI says, oh, we found it, I believe Minn State would have the ability to go get that money from SBI. In other words, Winona State, Minn State could be indemnified. For those reasons, I think the smarter path is to pass this today, set it up for the omnibus bill, but open to further commentary from any members, and let's make sure nobody has anything else on that. Representative Repinski, anything further?
Nothing
I'm sorry.
further, Chair Friends.
I'm sorry, Representative. I did not see Senator Howe's hand. Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess I'm just wondering how that process would be. Would we have to reconsider the bill then to then eliminate the bill, or you just wouldn't include it in the omnibus bill and kill it that way? The process, I think the process matters, and that's why I'm a little concerned about passing it now and not waiting the couple of weeks for SBI and then just passing it with the omnibus bill and including it. That's my concern. I think process matters.
I think it's a great point, Senator Howe. I think my take would be the omnibus bill's not going anywhere out of the LCPR for another month or so. So that was my thought. But I'm open to either House or Senate members who say, all right, we're not sure, let's lay it over. We're missing Senator Westland tonight. She's not feeling well. So I would invite further commentary on the idea of laying it over. I think we want to show this lady that we are here to do work and to get her benefits put together. And I think you've been very patient over the last few years. But it's a team sport here. Further commentary, if any, on a motion to lay it over or a motion to pass it? Seeing none. Last comments, Mr. Dale, Representative Repinski.
Senator Friends, the only thing I would say is I'm not a specialist in ERISA or this type of law, but it seems to me that it would be very unlikely we would be able to actually take those funds. It would probably be more likely that we would have to initiate some sort of lawsuit to claim that, you know, that they should be a constructive trust or something like that. It seems unthinkable, I think, that we would actually grab those funds.
I appreciate that, Mr. Dale. I'm a bit more optimistic that having demonstrated that there was a payment that needs to be reimbursed to Minn State or Winona State, that we would put together an amendment to an omnibus bill in the future and get it done. But having said that, respect where you're coming from. Last word, Representative Repinski.
Thank you, Chair Friends. No, I just hope we can find a solution to this problem for Ms. Cook. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, final opportunity to comment on the possibility of passing it. All right, hearing none, I'm going to talk to Ms. Linczewski for a second.
What's SBI?
All right. Thanks, ladies and gentlemen, for your patience. Before the bill is laid over for possible inclusion, and I mean lead pipe cinch certain inclusion in the omnibus bill, I'm going to go to Senator Nelson. Senator Nelson.
Oh, Mr. Chair, thank you. I really don't have any comments, except I think it is important that we follow procedure. I appreciate, I'll get caught up. I was on a bonding tour, but I'll get caught up in all the testimony. But certainly this is important. I'm glad to see everyone is aware of the importance, and I do concur with my colleagues regarding perhaps layover, but come back.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I would just ask that SBI and Minnesota State, by our next commission hearing, have at least an update to us, and they can provide that as a letter, but I think that they owe that to Ms. Cook as well. Thank you.
Excellent point, Senator Rasmussen. Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Cook. We will do right by you. You heard it here on the record. With that, the bill is laid over.
Thank you, everyone.
Next up, we have Senate File 3588, House File 3456. I believe Representative Cha, do you want to go to the testifiers table? Senator Pappas? I think that's fine. And Representative Cha raised that issue before. We are pleased to welcome the state auditor, the assistant fire chief from Coon Rapids, and Ms. Hennessy Allen, pension division coordinator. Thank you for coming back to LCPR. We were going to have a staff walkthrough, but I don't think that's necessary since you're here. With that, I had, Madam Auditor, you listed first on testifiers, and Senator Pappas, Representative Cha, either one of you can, from your seats, discuss the bill first before we take testimony. Representative Cha, Senator Pappas.
Mr. Chairman, I'm actually prepared to explain the bill. I'll just give a few introductory comments, and then I can turn it over to the state auditor, Ms. Allen, or Ms. Linczewski, whoever wants to kind of go into it. So I just wanted to say that the Fire Relief Association Working Group convened by the State Auditor's Office has been in existence for over 20 years. The working group provides a place for firefighters to discuss issues that are specific to fire relief associations and allows them to speak to issues with a collective voice. This year's bill just includes 4 provisions that everyone has to agree to before it can come before us, and I'll just turn it over to them to explain the provisions.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. Representative Cha, anything you want to add?
I said closing remarks. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Representative. Want to say, again, welcome back to LCPR. Also want to add for members that the state auditor, the pension division came to my office, went through these four. I believe they are widely agreed to. So with that, I don't know, Madam Auditor, if you want to start, but fire away.
Thank you, Senator, the Chair Friends, and members of the LCPR. And Senator Pappas covered my speech, which is great, because then I'll do what the most important job of mine is to introduce the experts, and also to also update you that Chief Aaron Johnston is not only Crystal's fire chief now, but he, what? Coon Rapids. Did I say Crystal? Excuse me, Coon Rapids.
She's getting nervous. It's okay.
Well, you know, yes. Coon Rapids Fire Chief, and also he's the treasurer of his fire relief, which is also very important. And with that, you know, I'll just turn it right over, Mr. Chair, to Director Allen.
That sounds just fine. Ms. Hennessy Allen, nice to see you again. We do have an amendment up here. Would you prefer to have us put the amendment on, or I see a head shaking? Ms. Hennessy Allen.
We're excited to, Chair Friends, we're actually really excited to talk about it, but it's not, that doesn't come from us.
All right, fair enough. Ms. Hennessy Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rose Hennessy Allen, Pension Director at the Office of the State Auditor. We have just a couple of slides I'll go through very, very quickly, just to give a flavor of fire relief associations and provide some data. So I hope the slides are showing. This first one, some data from most recent reports that are filed with us. Relief associations report to us on a calendar year, which is why 2024 is the most recent data we have right now. 2025 calendar year reports are coming in. One data point here I'll highlight is the average rate of return of 12.5% for that calendar year. It falls neatly right between the rates of return for PARA's SVF plan for that calendar year and the SBI balanced fund return for the year. I believe the SVF return was, I think, 10.4 for that calendar year, and the SBI balanced fund was 14.8, so it was right in the middle. Funding ratios, this shows relief association benefit levels and funding ratios. And for the most part, almost, you can see the funding ratios for relief associations are very high. So there's only a few that are below the 100% funded. So relief associations, they are governmental entities that also are incorporated as nonprofit organizations. They're governed by state law and local bylaws and provide retirement benefits to over 14,000 volunteer and paid on-call firefighters. They are run by elected local boards of trustees, and they're required to file annual reports with our office, the Office of the State Auditor, and meet statutory requirements to qualify for fire state aid. And fire state aid is typically a relief association's primary source of non-investment revenue. I think Senator Pappas highlighted this, but the Fire Relief Association Working Group was convened by the OSA in 2004 and considers and vets proposed legislative changes. And the working group only includes in its bill proposals that have received unanimous support from all of the members of the group. A common theme each year in the working group bill is proposals that with local control. Let's see here, I think. So what's in the bill? Sections 1 through 4 update definitions, and so Section 1 updates the definition of firefighting service to include duties performed by volunteer EMS, and then Sections 3 through 4 update definitions to reference that new firefighting service definition. Section 5 creates a new creates a new section in statute containing reorganized and clarified provisions for firefighters who return to active service. So a new subdivision 1 contains provisions for firefighters who return to active service after a break, and then a new subdivision 2 applies to firefighters who return after receiving a benefit or a pension. This is really the meat of the bill, and it's a cleaning up and reorganization that we're pretty excited about. Section 6 increases the audit threshold. So it would increase the threshold up to $1 million in either assets or liabilities from the current threshold of $750,000. This change brings the threshold in line with local government audit thresholds and helps audits be focused where they're most effective. So currently, there are about 46% of relief associations that are required to have an annual audit, and about 54% that are required to have an annual agreed-upon procedures engagement, which is performed by a CPA. The threshold increase would impact about 55 relief associations. So there's about 55 right now that are in between the 750 and the 1 million. This section also makes the change so that a relief association, if a relief association's assets and liabilities drop back below the threshold, the relief association could revert to having an annual agreed-upon procedures engagement performed by a CPA. Currently, once a relief association goes over that audit threshold, they have to keep doing an audit forever. And so this would permit them to drop back down to agreed-upon procedures engagement. And then the last sections of the bill make technical corrections that update a statutory reference, remove unnecessary language, and then clarify authorized disbursements when monthly benefits are replaced with annuities.
Thank you, Ms. Hennessy Allen. We have Aaron Johnston, Assistant Fire Chief from Coon Rapids, not Crystal, Coon Rapids, everybody knows that. Thank you for coming to LCPR. Please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Chair Friends, thank you. Aaron Johnston, Assistant Fire Chief, City of Coon Rapids. I'm also the Treasurer for the Defined Contribution Plan under the City of Coon Rapids. Chair Friends, member of the Commission, thank you for allowing me to testify today representing members of the State Auditor's Working Group. As you are aware, the working group is composed of members of the fire service and local government with the sole purpose of making relief associations more successful. The proposed changes to House File 3456 and Senate File 3588 aim to implement recommendations from the State Auditor's Working Group. Included updates to the definitions related to firefighting service, adjustments to financial reporting thresholds, and revisions to pension and benefit calculations for firefighters returning to active service after a break. These amendments seek to enhance clarity, equity, and the efficiency in the administration of the Fire Service Relief Association pensions. We extend our gratitude to the Legislative Commission on Pensions and Retirements for their dedication and efforts in reviewing and advancing these important updates to support Minnesota's firefighters and their families. I'll stand for any questions on the working group, our process, or the proposed recommended changes.
Thank you, Assistant Chief Johnson. It's probably worth thanking the members of the working group one last time also for time well spent and hopefully in service of the public safety community. If that's the conclusion of our testifiers, I know we have an amendment. Let's see first, before any amendments, if there are member comments or questions for the testifiers. Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two questions, and the first one has to do with, it's line 1.12 on the bill that adds volunteer emergency medical personnel. And can you explain if that's adding to the population, if that's adding a new scope of practice that is now covered under the relief associations that weren't previously, or if it's just a nomenclature issue?
Thanks, Representative. Maybe Ms. Hennessy Allen?
Thank you, Chair and Representative Nadeau. Relief associations have had authority for about 10 or 12 years to include in their membership individuals who belong to the fire department and solely perform duties as a volunteer EMS. if both the Relief Association's bylaws allow for that and the municipality has approved. And so what this definition change is doing is just including a population that already could be a member of the organization into the definition. The definition hadn't been updated when the statute provided that membership expansion.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Representative Nadeau.
And my last question is, I think it was in your last slide, you talk about clarifying authorized disbursements when monthly benefits are replaced with annuities. Can you explain that a little bit for me, please?
Again, perhaps Ms. Hennessy Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative. So there are about 18 relief associations that pay or provide the option of monthly benefits to retirees, and those, some relief associations have been phasing those out and replacing the monthly benefit with an annuity. There's a list in statute of authorized disbursements from the special fund, which is a relief association's restricted pension fund, and that list of authorized disbursements didn't clearly authorize annuity disbursements for those members. And so this is just making it clear that if a relief association were to discontinue monthly benefits, replace it with annuities, they could pay for those annuities from the pension fund.
Thank you for that. Representative Nadeau, you're good. Members, further questions? We have an amendment to this. I'm going to go to Senator Rasmussen. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First off, I just want to thank Auditor Blaha for her passion for volunteer firefighter relief associations and for our conversations over the years on this topic, and it's truly appreciated. And I've learned a lot from our conversations and with Ms. Hennessy Allen about the importance and the purpose and the challenges and opportunities that relief associations face. But it wouldn't be right to let you have your final bill without trying to mess with it a little bit. So one of the questions I had, Mr. Chair, for either Auditor Blaha or Ms. Hennessy Allen is, can you remind me when we last looked at these audit thresholds and when we changed that and when we changed it to? Because I remember a conversation, probably a few years ago at this point, that we changed these audit thresholds. So if you could just provide that context of the last time we changed them for relief associations, that'd be appreciated.
Thank you, Senator. Madam Auditor.
Thank you, Chair Frentz and Senator Rasmussen. I have also really enjoyed our conversations. If anyone ever wants to really get a quality nerd experience on this topic, you need to come to one of our meetings. I believe we raised it last time in 2024 is when we brought it forward. One of the things that is different about the thresholds here than compared to municipalities is that with municipalities, we generally put an inflationary multiplier on them. So they go forward and keep increasing. So frankly, this million will actually fall behind what the threshold for local governments will be as well. Since we don't put that inflationary kicker on there, basically, one of the things as a group we have decided is that we would revisit this every 3 years going forward to check and see if it makes sense to adjust it for inflation. Since we meet every year, it seemed like it was reasonable, as opposed to when it comes to municipalities, things can get really behind without an inflationary multiplier on them. So yes, last time was 2024, and we do, again, have it on the agenda to continue to come up.
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Auditor Blaha. And I guess it was my recollection, you correct me if I'm wrong, that back in 2024, I believe the audit threshold was at $500,000. We changed it to $750,000 in the 2024 session. And now here in 2026, we're going from $750,000 to $1 million.
Yes.
And so over the course of 2 years, we'd be doubling that audit threshold. And I do have a lot of sympathy for local units of governments and reliefs and their challenges of finding individuals, CPAs, to come in and do their audits. Mr. Chair worked on a bill that passed last year with Auditor Blaha and trying to make it easier for people to become CPAs and to get into this line of work, which is an important part of that. But I am somewhat concerned that over the course of 2 years, we're going to be doubling this audit threshold. And I wish we just had a more comprehensive approach to it. And maybe we do need to look at indexing it to some type of inflation, putting it within the context of what local units of government have. But that just, it seems like a lot over a short period of time. And so depending on member feedback, I have the 1A amendment, which would simply take that change out of the bill. It would keep it at the 750,000. It would actually fix the issue that Auditor Blaha and her team have flagged, which is if you have a relief that goes above 1 year but then goes down, they're stuck doing it forever. I think that's a common sense fix that we should change. But I don't know if it's the best idea to double the audit thresholds over a 2-year period, just given the complexity and how decentralized the relief associations are here in our state.
Senator Rasmussen offers the 1A amendment. Senator Rasmussen offers the 1A amendment. First of all, Ms. Hennessy Allen, do you want to comment on the 1A or Auditor Blaha?
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Chair Frentz and Senator. You know, this is a wonderful thing to talk about right now, and I am really excited. This is why I came here. I'm actually not feeling great, but I knew this amendment was coming, so I couldn't pass this up. It is a great thing to talk about. How do you set an audit threshold? And when we first look at this, it hadn't been moved for years. So we went back to try to figure out, okay, where did this number come from? And so we went back since I think we got it from ag. Then we went to the ag people. It's like, I think it was in a charitable gambling bill. It's like, oh, okay, where did you get it? Was it the federal government? The number came out of kind of somebody's gut. I'm thinking it was not necessarily based on anything in particular. When this first came up, I think I'd hoped to consider $1 million right away when we looked at kind of where inflation would have put it compared to the last time it was passed. It would have put it more at $1 million. The group wasn't ready for that at that point. And we've also seen since then that the federal audit threshold has gone up to $1 million. From $750,000. So just trying to get us in a place where it makes some sense that this number has some basis in reality or in anything, and then going forward we could get there. Again, $1 million I think is compared to when this was set, which was easily over 10 years ago, maybe 20. It was having a hard time finding when did this first come in, and I think this gets us again in a place that makes it much more in line with what other local governments do. Though, to be clear, since it doesn't have that inflationary kicker, it won't keep up. It will get behind the municipal standard pretty quickly. In addition, one other difference is frequency. Frequency is a real key issue when it comes to audits. We talk about audit versus an AUP. AUPs get at procedures. I'll tell you, when we talk about things, for instance, around fraud, that AUP, the agreed upon procedures, really get at those controls really well. And this group also has to do something every single year. There are many municipalities that don't have to do an AUP more than every 5 years. So this still is, I would say, a higher standard, a tougher threshold than the municipalities have, but it gets it closer to that point. And I don't want to change the frequency. I think that's the saving grace on this. If this were something that was happening once every 5 years, then I would be right in line with you. But since if they're not getting an audit, they're still getting an AUP every year. I think that balances this out.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. Senator Rasmussen, I'm going to give Senator Pappas or Representative Cha an opportunity to comment on the 1A amendment if you choose. Senator Pappas?
Yeah, I would prefer to keep it at $1 million based on the explanation that it really hasn't been keeping up and that seems to be much more of the standard in this case.
Thank you, Senator Pappas. Representative Cha? Okay, no commentary. Members, further questions or comments to the 1A amendment? Seeing none. Senator Rasmussen, you mentioned the possibility of hearing from the LCPR members and then deciding whether you want to go ahead with a vote or whether you want to withdraw the amendment.
Mr. Chair, we can go for a vote. And I think I appreciate the conversation on this today and just would like to take a more systematic approach. I think doubling it in the course of 2 years is too much.
All right. Senator Rasmussen moves that the 1A amendment to Senate File 3588 and House File 3456 be adopted. Are you asking for a roll call, Senator? All right, on a voice vote then. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
The motion does not prevail and the amendment is not adopted. Thank you, Senator Rasmussen. Anything further, Senator? All right. Members, any further commentary or questions for the testifiers on the file before us? With not, Senator Seeberger, would you be able to make a motion on Senate File 3588, House File 3456?
Mr. Chairman, could I make the motion since it's my bill?
Senator Seeberger, I think I'm going to give Senator Pappas the opportunity to move the amendment. Senator Pappas.
Or maybe Representative Cha would like to make the motion?
See, this is how it starts. You think you're just going to get it done?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Cha did say he had closing comments.
Representative Cha, closing comments, and then maybe a motion.
Thank you. No, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Senator Pappas. I just want to thank Auditor Blaha for your commitment to the firefighter relief group for the last 8 years. We know that this might be your very last time being in this committee, and so if you would allow, Chair, I'd like to Auditor Blaha to have a few moments to maybe say a few remarks.
We have flexibility. We're reasonable. Auditor Blaha.
Oh, wow, I didn't expect this. This is terrific. Well, I'm not running again, so hey, let's have a conversation. No, I'll just keep it very brief. I have truly loved working with this group. This is one of the first groups you get to work with when you start as state auditor, and they train you in well to come together. And again, I also want to throw it to our staff. Particularly under Director Hennessy Allen. It is a wonderful group to be part of. And the opportunity to sit next to these incredible public servants who are also deeply nerdy. I think if you all saw just how good they are at these issues, and they can drag you out of a burning building, it's really impressive. And so I am just so deeply grateful to have this opportunity. And this may not be the last time you see me. I mean, I can still come here and heckle. So I do really, again, appreciate working with all of you. And I have really loved our conversations. This has been the best committee. Don't tell the other committees, but this has been the best committee, the best group to work with, in that we have had some wonderful, wonderful conversations. And I really believe anytime we've disagreed, they have been genuine, thoughtful disagreements and have made us better because of them. So thank you.
Thank you. Well done, Madam Auditor. Representative Cha.
And with that,
Mr. Chairman, I would like to move that Senate File 3588 be recommended to be incorporated into the omnibus pension bill.
Senator Pappas moves that Senate File 3588 and House File 3456 be recommended to pass and incorporated in the 2026 Pension Omnibus Bill. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. The bill is passed. And thank you, Madam Auditor. Thank Assistant Chief Johnson. Thank you, too. Thanks for the excellent work. I sent you a picture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Senate File 3828, Senator Limmer, House File 3512, Representative Robbins. Welcome to LCPR. Senator, Representative, again, welcome to LCPR. We can have the staff do a walkthrough if you prefer. Representative, up to you, or we can just proceed with testimony.
I think we're ready to proceed with testimony. I was going to give a brief opening statement,
Please.
if that's all right.
Of course, please.
Thank you, Chairman and committee members. It's an honor to be here with our wonderful Maple Plain firefighters, and we are very honored to have them here with us tonight. And of course, our mayor, Mayor Julie, you'll meet her in a minute. So this is a unique situation that we wanted to bring forward to the committee, and I also want to give a great thanks to Ms. Limmer, who has been dogged in helping us get through this process, and she's, I mean, a state treasure, so that's, I can't say anything else. But we had a unique situation where our Maple Plain Fire Department is merging with West Suburban Fire, and the merger already happened. And when they merged, they were unaware that the merger of the pensions, because they're not withdrawing the pensions, they're just merging them, that it would result in a decrease in the payments to the younger firefighters. And it was very sad in our community. I mean, we had the former chief who has 2 young sons on the fire department now, and it was like disproportionately impacting the older versus the younger and causing a lot of concern in the community, and no one felt it was fair. And so what happened with the help of Ms. Lincheski, we got everybody together and we had a meeting in the fire station and we worked it through. And these firefighters together came up with this solution. This wasn't my idea. It honestly wasn't the idea Susan brought to the meeting that night. It was their idea of how to solve this and make it fair between the older and younger generations. Because as I said, no one is taking the money. It's just how it's calculated in the merger of the systems. And so they voted on it. This is a unique situation in our community, and this is what they came up with. And so I'm honored to present it on their behalf, and I look forward to any questions.
Thank you, Representative Robbins. Senator Limmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Senator Robbins explained the situation very well. In the western suburbs of Hennepin County, we have a collection of communities that are as large as any other township that later became a city, and yet at the same time, they don't have a sizable population as of now. They have smaller populations. Some are in concentrated developments, mostly on the east side of the city, toward Plymouth and Maple Grove. But nevertheless, it's a smaller population. And the fire departments and the communities out in that end of far western Hennepin County decided the best thing to provide fire service was to create this collaboration. And quite honestly, it's been working as a model, I think. And yet, Representative Robbins did create or explain the situation very well. We do have a conflict with the pension issues. And this proposal before us is, as she described, unique, but nevertheless, I think it satisfies all concerned. It really is a synergy of communities that provide a greater service to the people in the western suburbs than what they alone could do. We all know the cost of fire department equipment, and this is what I consider a really good model for other communities to follow as well. I've talked about the unique issue that we're facing, talked about the collaboration of these departments, creating one out of many one is a theme of our nation, but nevertheless, the synergy and the population being small is a perfect example of trying to solve a problem and yet create that collaboration that will continue. We have a number of testifiers, Ms. Chair, so I think before I put my foot in my mouth anymore, I'd like to ask you to bring these testifiers to the table.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Representative. I do have an author's amendment here, Representative Robbins, and would like to have Ms. Lincheski do just a brief staff walkthrough if you're okay with that.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Representative. Ms. Lincheski, the A1 amendment. And before we do that, why don't we have that offered? Would Representative Hill, would you be willing to offer the A1 amendment? Thank you, Representative Hill. Representative Hill offers the A1 amendment. This is to get the bill in the shape the authors wanted in. Before we do the staff walkthrough, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion prevails. The A1 amendment is adopted. Ms. Lincheski.
Thank you, Chair Frentz. I will try to be brief. This is a really complicated situation. It's taken many, many hours to figure out. So I'll just note some numbers. The fire department has roughly 20 actives, or they did before they moved over to West Suburban, some of them, and 5 deferred members. Their benefit level is $4,300 per year of service. They have roughly 1.9 million in assets, although that's a little bit old, that number, so it may be higher or lower. This is more than enough to cover the accrued benefits with some to spare. So there is likely still a surplus, a sizable surplus, in that there's going to be assets in excess of liabilities. The City Council and the firefighters started the termination process with PARA, And the reason we have para involved with this is that this is the Statewide Volunteer Firefighter Plan. It is not a fire relief. So there's not as much local sort of control over how this is done. It is regulated by a different chapter, not the Relief Association chapter, and para is the kind of administrator of this plan. Para calculated the benefits in this case, the accrued benefits in accordance with the statute, which requires the executive director to determine the present value of the accrued benefits. Oops. So this means that the accrued benefit of every firefighter who is not yet 50, which is the normal retirement age under the plan, will have their accrued benefit reduced to its present value. So if I can give you one example of that, which is a real-life example, a 43-year-old firefighter with 16 years of experience and a benefit level under the plan of $4,300 per year will have an accrued benefit of $68,800. That's 16 years of service times 4,300. However, because the firefighter is not yet age 50, his benefit is discounted to a present value of $46,000. So that's a reduction of $22,800 from the accrued benefit amount. I think the problem here is that this came as a surprise. We were not aware, I was not aware, in fact, that this present value calculation would result in this kind of an impact. So under the bill, the present value calculation is still required. So that is still going to happen. But the way this is sort of coming together so that firefighters are getting years of service times benefit level is the surplus is then allocated in such a way that that is what everybody will get. So it's a two-stage process. First, present value is determined, then assets are allocated so that everybody is going to, at the end of the day, get years of service times benefit level. If there is any excess after that, it will be allocated in proportion to years of service. So each firefighter's years of service as compared to all years of service for all firefighters, that'll be how the remaining assets there will be allocated. That's the end of my comments. If I can answer any questions, happy to do that.
Thank you. Excellent work, Ms. Lincheski. Now we'll go to the testifiers. I show Jacob, is it Shalander? Am I pronouncing that right? Please come forward. And then after that, Julie Moss-Kuski, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, would be on deck. So you can both come forward if you like. We're hoping for testimony of maybe 2-3 minutes per each testifier, if that sounds reasonable. Mr. Shalander, am I saying that right?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Schillender.
Mr. Schillender, thanks for coming to LCPR. Thanks for your patience. If you could just introduce yourself briefly and present 2-3 minutes of testimony, that would be great.
Yes, Mr. Chair and members, my name is Jacob Schillender. I serve as the city administrator for the city of Maple Plain. Our city has spent significant time, care, and effort making an incredibly difficult decision closing our fire department that has existed for nearly 100 years. The volunteer firefighters and the Relief Association are truly community institutions in Maple Plain. Beyond providing essential emergency response, especially in a community with a major rail corridor, the fire department has served as a generational, family-rooted organization that has shaped the character of Maple Plain for a century. Ending that tradition was not a choice made lightly. It was compelled by the realities of operating and funding a modern fire service. As we worked through this transition, the city was deeply concerned to learn that under current law, the assets of the Relief Association would not be distributed equitably to all members, particularly younger firefighters whose benefits were reduced because of the statutory present value calculation. This was a shock to many of our members, and it conflicted with what they believed they had earned through their years of service. Recognizing this, we led a long and detailed effort alongside our elected officials, our firefighters, and our partners in the Relief Association to find a fair, balanced, and lawful resolution. This work became more complicated because the Relief Association had joined the Statewide Volunteer Firefighter Plan. However, through collaboration and with the help of Representative Robbins and Susan, we ultimately reached a solution that the city and overwhelmingly majority of the members support. The solution is one reflected in Senate Bill 3828 and House 3512. The City of Maple Plains strongly supports this bill. It represents actuarial requirements while correcting a real and unattended inequity. Most importantly, it ensures that all firefighters, especially those younger than age 50, receive the benefit that they believed they were earning through their dedicated service. I will be the first to say I am not a pension expert, but I am an expert on what our community values. Maple Plain values the work, dedication, and service of its fire department members. Any resolution that unfairly distributes the assets they earn together would diminish that value and diminish the trust those members placed in the city. We respectfully ask the Commission to support this local decision, which treats all volunteer members equitably and honors a century of service to our community. Thank you, Chair Franz and members.
Thank you, Mr. Schillender. Well done. Mayor, is it pronounced Moskusky?
Yes.
You tell us, and then please present your testimony. Thank you for coming to the Pension Commission.
Thank you, Chairman Frentz and members of the commission. My name is Julie Moskusky, and I am proud to serve as the mayor of Maple Plain. The firefighters came to the city asking for our help to modify the current procedures for terminating participation in the Paris Statewide Volunteer Firefighter Plan, specifically the procedures for distributing the surplus. This request came directly from them in 90% agreement, and we are here on their behalf. We are not asking for any additional funding. The firefighters earned this money through their courageous service. They are our hometown heroes, answering the call 24/7. Often, they are sacrificing family time, career opportunities, and personal well-being to protect our community. They did not ask for the Maple Plain Fire Department to close their doors, which led to the termination of their para. What we are asking for today is for consideration of this one-time request for the Maple Plain Fire Department to allocate the surplus funds in the manner that reflects what these firefighters have rightfully earned. This legislation honors their service, respects local decision-making, and provides equity for every member who dedicated years of their life to protecting Maple Plain and surrounding communities. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mayor. Well done. Next, we'll have Justin McCoy, and on deck would be Brian Rice. President McCoy, is that right?
That's correct.
Welcome to the Pension Commission. Thank
Thank
you
you.
for your patience. If you could please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Yeah, absolutely. Chair Friends and members of the commission, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Justin McCoy. I am the president of the Maple Plain Volunteer Fire Department Relief Association. For over the last year, we faced the very difficult decision to close the Relief Association, which existed for almost 100 years. Besides providing the essential emergency services to our neighbors for fire suppression, medical care, and hazardous response, the Relief Association is valued and truly a community asset in our small town of Maple Plain. Citizens of our town for nearly a century have rallied around the fire department, firefighters, and all made the city a place for everyone to live and work together. When our Relief Association members and city officials found out that the assets of the Relief Association would not be fairly distributed amongst members, many members, young and old, expressed concerns of this inequity. This led to a long process where we worked closely with our state and city elected officials to come to a fair resolution. That effort has been complicated a bit because we moved our funds into the State Volunteer Fire Fund. In the end, we came to the resolution that passed by a vast majority of our members in the city with the help of Representative Robbins and Senator Limmer, and that proposed solution is in the bill before you. We're here today to ask you to support this local decision that was made, which will treat all of the volunteer members in an equitable manner. I get a front row seat on a daily basis to see the hard work and the sacrifice of the firefighters sitting behind me and how they contribute to the community on a daily basis. I think any resolution that unfairly distributes the assets of the Relief Association only degrades the value we have for these individuals. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, President McCoy. Well done. Next, we'll have Brian Rice. Mr. Rice, welcome back to LCPR. If you could please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Thank you, Chair Friends. Brian Rice, Walther, and Mosley. I'm here today on behalf of the Maple Plain Fire Department Relief Association. Let me just tell members of the commission, this is a very important issue. The next bill you're going to hear is a related matter. I think the commission needs to understand how unique these relief associations are. They're called pension funds, but at best, they're very rudimentary, simple plans that provide a form of deferred compensation for volunteers who step up and handle things in a local community. And yes, they've had very odd vesting schedules over the years, up to 20 with years of full vesting and minor steps along the way. But the poll star of all of these relief associations that for a year of work, you get a year of benefit. And as Ms. Lincheski indicated and as Representative Robbins indicated, they put a lot of time. And frankly, the members were shocked what 363G provided in terms of what happens when you terminate a plan. And so there's two things. This is very unique about having a relief association, but the other issue that is before you tonight that you're gonna have to deal with yet again is termination of these relief associations, because tonight you're just gonna see the tip of the iceberg. And so what happens when you cut off a relief association and tell these volunteers they no longer have a job? Well, I'll tell you what happens. Representative Lilly worked with me on a bill years ago, and Representative O'Driscoll, Maplewood. The city decided they were going to get rid of the department, fire the members, which they did, and then take the money. They were going to take the pension money, $1 million plus. Correct, Representative O'Driscoll? And that created a big hubbub, and we had to come to the legislature and do a fix. The Relief Association had to give up $1 million, but what happened after that, that led to this. An LCPR work group report on firefighter relief associations, conversions and dissolution from 2019. You're going to hear later from a member of that work group. And the idea was if you lose the fund, if the city for whatever reason decided we're going to stop the service, everybody's going to get fully vested up. Everybody's going to get all years of service treated the same, and we're going to have a method for distributing the money. But what happened? This concept of present value got dropped into the bills. And when you talk about present value, major disparities, as Ms. Lincheski pointed out, a 33% reduction for a 43-year-old member. Justin here is, what, how old are you, Justin?
42.
42. 42, he looks younger. Well, one of his colleagues, Jessie, is here, she's 35. They came on at the same time. They served 10 years each. The reduction that Justin is going to have is about 30%. The reduction Jessie would have under this state law will be 60%. Basically, her 10 years of service aren't going to be worth $4,300. They're going to be about worth $1,500. There's nobody in this planet that I think would say that's right, except this, present value, which is a great concept when you value your TRA plan, your PRA plan, the police and fire plan. You set aside the money, but guess what, members? TRA ain't going away, PRA, police and fire is not going away, and any of these other plans, or if they do, it's going to be a real hard day. But these relief associations are fading away. They're a bit of a relic in some places of time of the past, and so I would really urge the commission, what's being asked tonight, I think Ms. Lincheski did an excellent job on this bill and the next bill to tailor a relief, particularly in this plan. It will only apply in this case in Maple Plain to the statewide plan. And the next bill, I think, corrects something that kind of got put in the bill that you really need to address, because at least I've been representing volunteer relief associations since the mid-'80s. And I guess I was shocked as I was at the meeting in Maple Plain, the fire station, and Susan had to pull my chain and said, here, read the law. And I said, you got to be kidding me. So I know I've gone on a long time, Mr. Chair, but I really think the commission, this is the right thing to do. It's the fair thing to do to these members. And I appreciate you're going to hear from from other people about the concept of present value. That really works when you're talking about the teacher fund and billion-dollar plans. I mean, just the last point is, these funds are all overfunded. This first sheet, they talk about these pension plans on average. The average funding ratio for these volunteer plans is 157%. The members aren't even getting the money now that for the active people. Now when you're terminating them, you're going to cut them off at the knees, fire them from their jobs, their dream jobs, and give them half of what they thought they were getting. And these are critically functions. Fortunately, a lot of these members, like Justin's others, have gone on to this larger relief association, and they're still going to continue their volunteer service. But honestly, it's I think Ms. Lincheski and Representative Robbins, who were in that meeting well before me. I was called in that this is going to be a simple, okay, we got to close up and turn the corporate affairs of the business.
Mr. Rice,
over.
we do need to close. up.
Okay,
You can
thank
wrap
you,
up
Mr.
your
Chair.
testimony.
I'd be happy to answer questions.
I appreciate that. Thank you for your testimony. Next, we're going to have Doug Anderson, and on deck would be Troy Dennison. Mr. Anderson. Mr. Anderson, welcome back to LCPR. If you could please introduce yourself. We're hoping for testimony, 2 to 3 minutes, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, commission members. I'm Doug Anderson, Executive Director for PARA. PARA's board does not currently have a position on this bill. However, I am testifying to share my ongoing concerns. The authors and the LCPR staff have made changes to the bill to try to address my concerns, and I do appreciate those efforts. Despite those changes, I remain concerned about how a bill can reduce benefits by over $200,000 for 11 members and redistribute those assets to 13 other members. The overriding effect of the methodology in this bill is to eliminate the calculation of a present value to determine the final retirement amounts. I do note that this is done in a two-step process. Step 1 does use present value, but there's a second step that effectively undoes that. So the total effect is to really eliminate the use of using a present value. This means that something intended to be paid in the future is now assigned the same value in today's dollars. This approach negates the fundamental time value of money concept that is key to how a defined benefit plan benefits are earned and funded. The net result of this approach use has the exact same effect as removing early retirement reductions. You're familiar with Rule of 90 that provides unreduced benefits when age and service total 90. This bill would implement a rule of 0 because member benefits will be unreduced regardless of their age or service. The bill is not needed to correct any flaws in methodology or administration. The current methodology to determine benefits and allocate excess assets follows standard defined benefit procedures. And while I remain concerned with some legal aspects, I'm more concerned with the idea of a bill that has a such clear and dramatic impact of reducing some member benefits in order to increase benefits for other members. The only reason for the bill appears to be to increase younger member benefits at the expense of older members. As noted earlier, 11 members' benefits would be reduced by over $200,000. I do appreciate the efforts to address my concerns, but I still ask the Commission to be sure that they are comfortable with the approach taken and the adverse impact it has on long-serving plan members. Thank you for hearing my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. If I'm understanding correctly, Para Board does not take a position on this. You're just offering testimony to help LCPR members understand the full context.
Chair Friends, that's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Dennison, welcome to the committee. If you could please introduce yourself and present your testimony.
Chair Friends and members of the Commission, thank you. First off, Representative Johnson, Representative Johnson, Representative Steer, Senator Steenberger, and Senator Howe, thank you for your services as first responders. My name is Troy Dennison. I serve as a trustee of the Maple Plain Fire Relief Association. I'm speaking on behalf of the members who oppose HF 3512. The issue before the Commission is not whether firefighters will receive their earned benefits. They will. The issue is how the surplus is distributed and the direct impact that this bill will have on members specifically over the age of 50. Current statute provides a clear, neutral, and grounded framework for allocating surplus funds. No statutory deficiencies have been identified, and the proposed bill does not correct a defect specific to Maple Plain firefighters. The proposed bill restructures the formula, giving priority to members under the age of 50 at the direct expense to members over the age of 50. Under current law, each member receives present value of their age 50 benefit. Any remaining surplus is distributed proportionally based solely on years of service. Members with equal years of service receive equal value, regardless of their age. The proposed bill changes that structure. As outlined earlier, the proposal provides an additional unit of money to members under the age of 50 at the direct loss to members over the age of 50. Distribution data makes this impact very clear. Members over age 50, those who have already met the statutory eligibility, will lose between $13,000 and up to $46,000 depending on age and years of service per member. The 5 most senior members of the fire department would see average losses exceeding $36,000 per person. The total loss to members over the age of 50 is over $220,000. By contrast, members under the age of 50, mostly in their 30s, would see increases in excess of $20,000, some upwards of $30,000. This allocation to members under age 50 is not new money. It comes from the existing surplus pool. It is a direct transfer from members over 50 to members under 50. These are retirement-based funds that were promised to members when they reached the age of 50. That is what all members counted on during their dedicated years of service to the Maple Plain Fire Department. This is not about opposition to younger members. It's about maintaining neutrality and honoring the structure under which the benefits were earned. The present value adjustment reflects timing before age 50, not a penalty. Changing the payout formula after the distribution of the fire department, after service has been completed, and after benefits have been earned under existing law raises serious concerns about fairness and trust. As a trustee, I have an obligation to ensure recommendations are handled impartially and fairly. I cannot support legislation that shifts hard-earned and well-deserved retirement funds from one age group to another age group based solely on age. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dennison. Members, that's the end of the testifiers. A question was raised about the Maple Plain City Council. I wonder if Mayor Maskusky could come back up briefly, please. And then we'll go to member questions. Okay, we'll go Rasmussen, Howell. Mayor, thank you for coming back up. Just a question was raised. Was there any city council action that attempted to address the bill or the contents of the bill or the equity of the age issue? And if so, would you mind testifying to the committee what happened at the city council vote, for example?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was not a vote by the city council. We have 2 city elected officials that serve on the Relief Association as liaisons.
Okay, thank you for that. Members, we're going to go to questions, starting with Senator Rasmussen and then to Senator Howe. Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd ask if Mr. Anderson could come back to the table. I have a couple questions for him.
Mr. Anderson. Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're being asked what is fair today, right? And what's fair in pensions. And so I think it's important for us to be thoughtful and to get this right. Mr. Chair, question for Mr. Anderson. I guess one of the problems that the bill's trying to solve for is that there's going to be a termination of the relief of the fire department. Is there any mechanism for folks to continue in the statewide plan if the underlying fire department has been terminated? Or does action have to occur right now?
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Chair, Senator Rasmussen, so this plan would terminate, and then these members would no longer participate in this plan. They may resume being a volunteer in a different plan and continue on under the terms of a different plan, but this is a final step in completing this plan.
Senator Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Anderson. And I guess the other problems, that's solving one problem, so I guess there does have to be a distribution because the underlying plan is ending. The other problem this bill is trying to address is the fact that there's surplus. There's once the promised benefits have been paid out, there's additional surplus there. If hypothetically, we could have gone back and addressed that surplus and increased benefits so that there wouldn't have been a surplus, what would be the end state for the members if there wasn't any surplus and it was all distributed through higher benefits that matched the assets in the plan?
Mr. Anderson?
Mr. Chair, Senator Rasmussen, so the existence of a surplus in itself comes from fire state aid and earnings, and it's built over time. It's not uncommon that there's a surplus, as you are aware. The way or the mechanism currently in statute to absorb those excess assets, get them back to members, is the same as if you raise the benefit level to the highest possible level that would kind of take up the rest of those assets. So if a governing body was closely tracking and setting their benefit level so that the plan is exactly 100% funded, that would take care of the surplus. It would then allocate the assets to the members in proportion to their present value. So the present value, those that have been there longer, that are near their retirement age, would have a larger portion of that surplus. Those that are new and have had few years or further away from retirement would get a smaller portion of that surplus.
Senator Rasmussen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator
That's all I have
Howell?
for now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess my question, and I'm not quite sure who needs to answer this, and maybe it's, but hasn't this ever happened and been addressed before? Is this new territory for us?
Well, Senator Howell, after I joined the Pension Commission in 2018, for about 10 days, we had the Maplewood situation. I'd be happy to have Representative O'Driscoll or Senator Pappas talk about that, although I see some hesitance. It's a tough story, but yes, it has come up before in principle, not quite like this. I don't know if Representative O'Driscoll, you want to say anything on that? Look at the enthusiasm with which Representative
Chair,
O'Driscoll leaps to the microphone.
This commission is in the unenviable position of every decision we make deals with money for someone. And it's not for any of us. And so we're trying to substitute our judgment for other plans on here. And I don't know if I necessarily have a comment specifically on past history on this, but I will tell you that we're going to see more of this in the state of Minnesota on a go-forward basis. And Senator Howe and I hail from the central Minnesota area, and there are communities, I can think of at least 3 of them, that have signs out that say, you know, paid on call, benefits, pension, right? That is exactly what it says on the sign. And they're trying to entice people because they're shorthanded. And I fear that more smaller communities and local firefighting units are going to end up having to be melded into larger or regional events. And this is not just a one-off. We have 2 one-offs tonight, right, on this. And so this commission, this legislature is going to need to assign someone, you know, in a workforce or a task force to look at these kinds of things, because every termination appears to be somewhat different with different circumstances around them. And so we're asked again to pick winners and losers in an environment like this. I don't know if there's a magic you know, bill or legislation or language that fixes this, but this is not a passing thing. This is going to be something that we are going to be dealing with at this level. Those that are coming back, some of us are finishing our tour of duty on here, but that's where we're going to be. And so thinking about this, working in this, using best practices is going to be in the state and this commission's best interest.
Thank you,
Did I
Representative.
effectively avoid your question?
Very well said.
Good dodge.
Senator Howe.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and a great dodge for my great confidant over there, and Senator Representative O'Driscoll. So here's where I'm coming from, that I'm struggling with this. When I retired off the professional fire department at 52, I took an age reduction from 55 to 52. When I retired off a year later, retiring off the volunteer department I served, I was 52. I should have got full. I took a reduction because I only had 19 years on that department. So there is a different method to do this that I don't think has been addressed or looked at. So I'm not sure exactly which is the right approach in this case, but there are other alternatives out there that address the situation with you don't have 50 years of service or don't have the 20 years of service. Because went out at 19, I took a reduction in my volunteer pension. So I'll just put that out there for seed. This is a tough thing to try to figure out, but I took a reduction both ways. And so I can see how this creates some angst.
Thank you, Senator Howe. Thanks for your service, too. We're going to go to Senator Nelson, then Representative Nadeau, then Representative Johnson. Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is kind of like a Hobson's choice here. This is a very dicey issue. And, but the challenge is, as hard as this issue is right now, today, it is going to be much harder. So one of you mentioned that. I think the most important imperative for us is to plan what this is going to look like in the future. You cannot unring the bell of the past, but we definitely should be well aware now and what is going to happen when there is another type of merger, so to speak. And I just think we have to be very, very careful going forward because anything we do is going to be precedent. And I would I don't have the answer as far as what should happen, but I don't think I've heard what that answer is yet that I would want to see become precedent going forward. So I'm hopeful that there can be some planning going forward about what to do in case of a situation like this. And I do believe we will see it in the future. So I will be weighing that heavily going forward.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Representative Nadeau.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is incredibly interesting, more than challenging. I mean, I think it's great that there's a surplus. You know, if we didn't have a surplus, we'd be having a very, very different conversation here. And so I'm struggling, and I think I want to ask, Mr. Anderson, you know, this present value thing, and we're going to have this discussion in the next bill as well. So is it fair to say that, I mean, the key here is that we're terminating a plan. We're ending it, you know? And so, I mean, I could see, okay, we could, you know, put a cap on how much we allow, you know, relief funds to be funded. You know, should we allow 157%? I don't know. I mean, it's out of, you know, I'm not sure. You know, we work really hard to get to 100% in our other pension programs. The more funded you are, the more tools you have, the more options you have to do it. But is it fair to say that if we were terminating this and it were 100% fully funded, that the longer-serving members would be maxed out at what they anticipated, the less serving, the fewer year service members would never have been able to achieve that because they stopped. So would that be more fair if we were 100% funded?
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Nadeau, if I understand your question correctly, I'll try here to see if I have it. So if a plan is 100% funded, that's looking at the present value of everyone's accrued benefit. So those near retirement, their present value is going to look very much like their their age 50 retirement. Those further from retirement are going to have a much smaller benefit. So that's the funding. The funding for a plan is based on that present value. So there's relatively little funding that goes early in a career because it's put in at a small amount, expecting to grow over time. So if the assets are equal to everyone's present value, everyone's entitled to get their present value. A change like what's proposed here, in which there would be no reduction for present value, would not, the assets would not be there to support it.
Right. And
Representative Nadeau.
thank you, Mr. Chair. And so what I'm trying to get my head around is the last testifier, I think it was Mr. Dennison, said that the longer-serving members are giving up an average of $36,000, and don't quote me, I don't know what it was, but they're giving up something they theoretically, with the termination of a fund, could have received, but that, as long as the fund kept going, they weren't entitled to that, correct?
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Nadeau, if the plan were to continue to keep a surplus and not raise the benefit level, then that surplus would not be distributed. So it's really upon termination that that surplus is distributed. And the other mechanism is that the benefit level can be raised at any point to kind of absorb that amount, which would raise the benefit to all members.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Representative Nadeau.
And finally, and thank you. And because we're terminating the fund, we need to get rid of, we need to spend the surplus. And I'm glad that the city didn't try to take it, I guess. But which is, out there.
We didn't know, right?
But, and this is a judgment that I want to ask. And I know that you're an actuary and I know how hard this is, but do you feel that what has been crafted is, with this particular situation, is fair? It may not be equitable in an actuary's mind, but is it fair?
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Chair, Representative Nadeau, in my opinion as an actuary, this proposed change is not fair.
Okay.
Because it's changing what's currently in statute. And I think to be clear that there is a portion of the statute that specifically defines how a planned termination should work. I think it was put in around 2018. It's modeled at what happens in the private sector. And I know private sector rules don't always have to apply to public sector, but in the private sector for planned terminations that happen all the time, there's really only one approach to allocating excess assets to members, and that's based on a present value basis. So that's what was put into statute years ago before there was, then there hasn't been a SVF-related termination since. So it was a process put in place years ago. This proposal, this bill, would change what exists. And so when we're talking about the impact to members, we're talking about the impact of this bill and how it changes what's already in statute.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Anderson.
Mr.
Thank you,
Anderson.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Nadeau. Representative Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. This might be for Director Winchesky. I just doing the math on the back of the paper here. The example you gave, firefighter with 43 years old, 16 years of service, with this reduction would be getting $46,000. And some of this conversation is around like the folks maybe have less years of service versus more than the older folks. But if you do the same math, a 50-year-old firefighter with 11 years of service, they would be getting $47,300 if it's $4,300 per year.
Ms. Linchesky.
Yeah, Chair France, Representative Johnson, it would be 4,300 times 11. I can't run the math, but yes.
Representative Johnson.
So just closing out, thank you, Chair. In this fairness discussion, a firefighter with 16 years of service would walk away with less dollars than a firefighter with 11 years of service solely based on their ages. And I think, if we're talking about fairness, the benefit for years of service and all those types of things, what we have here is, I think, a fair way to do that.
Representative Johnson, are you looking for Ms. Linchesky to respond, or?
No,
you're
that's good.
All right, thank you. Members, further questions for the testifiers? Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So when the statute was put in place, I don't think there was anybody that was ever anticipating that we would be closing down relief associations, because fire is a constant, public safety is a constant, people's need for medical attention and things are just constant in our society. So there was not a contemplation about how to terminate these plans. And here we are tonight trying to figure out how to terminate a plan and what to do with those dollars. Again, I want to caution the commission that it may be in the state's best interest so that we don't spend inordinately large amounts of time like we are tonight, and in a follow-up bill on the same topic, that we put a work group together to see about what to do with these kinds of things, to find out some best practices. I'm tending to support what Maple Plain has done because they have an agreement. It's not a unanimous agreement among their members, but they have an agreement. And it's raising the issue to us, and we're learning from that we need to do something on a more global basis. But they can't wait for a global decision because they're needing to close this and get on with the next phase or chapter of their life with how they're going to be providing fire service. And those members who are leaving the Maple Plain Fire Service to go over to their successor community on that. And I thank them for their willingness to do that as well, because that is another way for them to serve their community. So there is no perfect solution. This is an equitable solution. This is a worked out solution. It is a negotiated solution. But don't lose track. We need to do something on a larger basis so that we don't have to spend more time on this commission dealing with these on a 1 and 2 basis, because they're coming. It's coming. There's a change in people's willingness and desire to be volunteer or paid on call and working in their community. And their Maple Plain is just another early canary in the mine of something that's going to be occurring. So maybe we should have a more global discussion, not tonight, but at another point in time, about what a task force might look like to bring back some recommendations so that we have something in statute that contemplates what happens at the termination of a relief association, because they will be coming.
Thank you, Representative O'Driscoll. We're going to go to Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Anderson, wasn't it, and I believe it was shortly after I started my firefighter career, that didn't we close a bunch of relief associations and roll them into PRA?
Mr. Anderson.
Mr. Chair, Senator Howe, I'm not familiar with that timing, so my time only goes back to 2015, so I'm not.
Well, okay.
Senator Howe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I remember when I started at the St. Cloud Fire Department, shortly thereafter, they closed and they rolled those relief associations into the other, into PRA. And there was some leftover, I don't know if there was leftover money, what that deal, but there was I try to figure out exactly when we closed those relief associations, some of that money rolled in. I'm not quite sure if it all rolled in. If I was quite green behind the ears when all that was going on, and I had no idea what pensions were all about. But there has to be some history there, and I, when we look at time value of money, if I take this money and if I was given that chunk of change and rolled it over into an IRA, what's it going to be when I hit the time when I can pull that out? And if I get this amount, if I get $10,000 at 30 years as opposed to $15,000 at 50 years, there's a big difference of what that's going to be when I need to draw it out. And that does have to take some effect into this decision. And so, I'm torn because I see both sides of this, but I don't know if I'm totally comfortable with the bill that we have in front of us, that this deals with that in a fair and equitable manner. Because I don't think it takes into consideration really the time value of money and what that investment looks like over that time frame. Because all of this should be rolled into a retirement account. You're not taking this and cashing it out unless you're going to pay taxes on this stuff. Most of this is all going to get rolled over. And with that, if I'm rolling this over, if I'm rolling over a smaller amount for a longer period of time, it's going to end up being the same value as that other piece because he's got a shorter period of time to invest it. And that's the thing that I think is lost in this bill. So that's my concerns about passing this on what it is, because I don't think it takes in that time value of money as it invests for the long haul as they get this chunk of money, because it's all getting rolled over. This isn't going into somebody's bank account. This is going into somebody's IRA. And that's where the difference makes. Because the older gentleman, the person that has been there the longer, needs a bigger chunk of change because he's got a shorter period of time to make up that dollar. That's what pensions are all about. Thank you.
Okay, members, we're going to not get to the last three bills tonight, so we're going to continue to take member comments. This is important to the folks that have been sitting here for 2 hours, but just to be clear, we're going to have to move. And the chair's inclination, given all the questions, is to lay this bill over. Having said that, Senator Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Well, I'll just be very brief. With all of that discussion, you know, I'm looking for the actuarial answer. There should be an actuarial answer because we are looking at set amounts of contributions over set amounts of time. We don't always know what the return on that's going to be, but there certainly must be an answer that is based on actuarial science. And I would hope that we can look towards that and then make sure we have a thoughtful policy going forward.
Thank you, Senator Nelson. Members, thank you for a very valuable discussion. I want to say to the men and women of the Maple Plain Fire Department, you've been patient tonight, and we're going to lay this bill over. You have my commitment that we will revisit this bill this session and that we will take action that is consistent with what you've done, and that includes every member of every age. And I want to add, if we had to spend the time thanking all of you for the service to the community, we would be here all night. But we're here to have to make some tough choices, and we have several members of the public safety community on the LCPR who know very well that you make tough decisions all the time. They're not easy, but you have to make them, and we will do that for you. With that, Senate File 3828, House File 3512 is laid over for possible inclusion. Members, we're going to basically have to postpone the rest of the agenda for tonight. We're coming up on 2 hours. We will reconvene. For those advocates for the bill, this bill is sitting right here and can be included in the pension omnibus bill this year. I think we want to create a little space for some of these members to have a little more conversation. Mr. Anderson, thank you for your testimony. Mayor, City Administrator, you have done everything you can, including bringing a consensus to us. Senator Limmer, Representative Robbins, thank you. Have patience that we want to get this right. And I think the final word really goes to Representative O'Driscoll, not that he's going to speak it here, but we have an issue that is important to Maple Plain, but we're going to have this coming. And we better ask ourselves, what if there's a sufficiency? What if there's an overfunded pension? And what do you want to do when they terminate? Because as Representative O'Driscoll points out, this is surely coming down the track. So thank you, everybody. Buckle up. And with that, the Pension Commission is adjourned for the night. How's that?